But this move is going to happen anyway, Dharmesh?
It feels like it will happen, but there is going to be a delay now, clearly, because after yesterday's news, we were expecting this to accelerate pretty quickly. As you said, you came off air and was like, right, this deal's happening. But now we've got this situation where they are not happy and they want some sort of, they want it looked into how Tottenham Hotspur have approached this. It's very difficult in transfers in particular to keep, you mentioned it before, everybody talks to everybody else. So it's how certain bits of information has been transmitted to certain parties and whether it was done in good faith or whether it was done where it shouldn't have been done.
We've seen cases where teams perhaps have known what the trigger clause, the release clause is, when there necessarily hasn't been club-to-club contact, Mark, and so they've bid just a little bit higher to prove that they didn't know what the release clause was.
The famous one was Arsenal and Luis Suarez at Liverpool.
Yeah.
We understand it was anything over 40 million would have triggered the opportunity for the player to speak to the club, and Arsene Wenger very famously bid 40 million and £1, which was the release clause, so they were entitled to speak to the player. It never ended up happening. But yeah, and sometimes you have release clauses. For example, Neymar Jr., when he went from Barcelona to PSG, that had to be paid in full. So it was a cheque for 220 million euros on the table from PSG to La Liga. We are paying your release clause. Other release clauses, as Dharmesh alluded to, they can be unique to that particular deal. It could be 3 payments over 18 months of X, 3 equal payments. Every release clause is ever so slightly different, and it's one of those situations we try and gather as much information, but ultimately the club can do nothing if that is contractually written between the two parties. If you pay X, Y and Z in these kind of payments, in this kind of timescale, there's nothing we can do about it.
That's the case with Matheus Cunha. So Manchester United knew it was £62.5 million, but the conditions of that release clause were they pay a third of it immediately, they pay a third of it next summer, and the summer after that they complete that £62.5 million payment over 3 instalments. Now, you said before, sometimes clubs go above the release clause, and people will say, why would you pay above the release clause? Well, sometimes clubs will try and say, you know what, we're willing to pay you, say it was £62.5 million for Cunha. I was told at the time that Manchester United were not only exploring the deal as the conditions set out that Wolves had, but they were also exploring potentially paying above £62.5 million in exchange for more favourable payment terms. Because in this world of PSR, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more later in the show, you have that situation where the £62.5 million won't come out of Manchester United's account straight away. It will be the first instalment. So if they can spread a slightly higher payment over, say, 4 instalments, then that 20 odd million pounds that they're paying at the moment, that would be reduced per year, and that would help them per financial year in their PSR calculation.
Wow. I bet you all didn't know that you were going to become experts in
I'm finally using my economics degree.
releases.
I did an economics degree, finally using it.
There you go.
Yeah. My brain is whirring. OK, that's all as it is. There's nothing we can do about that. We have to wait for the legal process to play out. But what does this mean in terms of Spurs now? So they want their player as soon as possible. They've got a pre-season tour to go on.
They might just have to be patient. Like Dharmesh said, you get the feeling this will happen. However, they may just have to wait a little bit longer to just clear up things legally and make sure they're in a comfortable position, because the last thing they want to do is be dragged through the courts.
A very good evening to you. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Premier League clubs have already spent well over £1 billion this summer and are on course to break their own spending record.